Right then, just recently we've had the 48-hour film competition where people gather together and have to make a film in its entirety in 48 hours. And David Duckworth is very busy in the local video making scene, and we're going to try and get him on the line now to find out about his experience of 48-hour filmmaking. And I can't find his number. It's a bit of a nuisance. Oh, here we go. Right, should have him on the line very shortly. Good evening, David. Good evening.
How are you doing?
Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. Dave Duckworth joins us on After Dark, and we're live this evening. David, you've done a few of these 48-hour film competitions.
Yes, indeed. Had a few years I've been involved in it and quite enjoyed it, and the progresses and the highs and the lows. So it's been quite an interesting journey. So yeah. How can I share this with you?
Let's have a talk about a few of the lows, because it gets pretty stressful, doesn't it?
Well, it just comes down to strategy and planning, and just sort of, people often ask me that haven't been involved, well, are you up for 48 hours doing these projects? And I sort of say, well, that's entirely up to the team. It's really just 48 hours to complete the project, and how well you do it. And the highs and lows are just really the rush, and the occasional slip-ups, and the sound errors, and the computer issues, and the rendering. And so there's quite a lot of that stress involved that you would typically find on a restricted time frame. And the whole idea is just to get something as the best quality as the end result, and you're rushing to get that done. So that can be all part of it. So, yeah.
So how does it work, David? Do you how do you find out what you've got to make your film on?
Yes, look, no, fair question. And what happens is the team leaders of the cities around New Zealand, which is a national competition, and once you start to join the group, there's several ways to find the group on Facebook, or there's other ways of, that's primarily how I got involved in it, with a few people that were going before the earthquake itself. We kind of I got to find out about the competitions running around and see people running around with a camera during this weekend, and then I asked questions and then got involved. And so once you know what you're signed up to, you pay your fee to enter the competition as a team. And on the evening, you sort of all meet together, and you basically get given a number as such. And then, of course, that's your team number that you work with. And just before 7 o'clock, you before you begin, you're given certain elements to work with, and they could be a number of different things, like a genre, whether it's a horror or whatever it could be. It just depends on that year and what they decide to do. And then once you're given that, everyone's kind of given certain perspectives to work with. It could be type of shot that they want you to use, and everyone has to try and implement that same style, but in their film, which could be any sort of style. And then an element of type, there could be anything. It depends, and it's very random. So this year they wanted a wind effect, like to see a wind coming on the screen, and a bird's eye view from a camera, so a camera looking down, and then laughter. They want a laughter in there. And once you've got those elements, and your type of film that you're going to make, then you're pretty much the rest is yours. So that's pretty much what you're given.
How big is the crew? Are there limits on how many people you can have?
No, that's the thing. You can have as many as you like, but the theme is, because you've got 48 hours, you don't really want a huge team. Although if you're well gelled together and you know what you're achieving and you're pretty set to go, then it would be no harm as long as you've got that working mechanism beforehand. Because within that time frame, you're really stepping on each other's toes, and everybody needs to know what they're doing. And some people might sit back and really do nothing at all because the style of the storyline doesn't really execute more than what it needs to. So for this year, I had a really fantastic team that were involved in makeup that wanted to sort of give this a bit of a try, and Kyra and the team, they're all just wonderful ladies, and it come to the point where I didn't know half the people on set, but they were really dedicated, and that really helped, because, you know, one makeup person doing a whole lot of people can be a bit of a challenge, and that sometimes is the key element, is getting a lot of people that know what they're doing and to really help make it work faster if there's something that you need. So it just depends. Every subject and every story, and whatever way you put it, is really where you've got to judge how many should be involved, and sort of making sure that everyone does their thing at the right time, and just execute the filming with minimal people if you don't need them.
What roles have you done over various 48 hours?
Yes, well, I have mainly been behind the camera as a cinematographer, camera operator, and editor. That's been my main. I sort of enjoy the pressure behind that. I've never directed as such, but sometimes you kind of put a portion of that in there just to kind of help with momentum, and people lose a bit of energy, and you know, sometimes you're doing late hours just to get that shot, so you kind of pull the weight and then equal that with somebody else. And there's a few people in the past I've worked with that I've ended up being director and lighting person, and you kind of ended up wearing a few hats at the same time. So when I do say just camera operator, it's kind of like sharing the load of other people as well, and teaching people that haven't been familiar with it, and to kind of give them a bit of a shot as well, which is a good opportunity for them. So that's primarily what I've advocated towards, is camera and editing itself anyway.
Have you experienced meltdowns on set?
Yes, big time. There has been one year that has been a bit of a personality clash on set, and that was just pure wrong people involved in it, and good people though, very, very good people to work with, but the wrong team to put them into. And it has sort of created a little bit of friction that wasn't really, really deserved. But, you know, you've got to sometimes find that out, you know. You never know until you try it. And that's kind of really what happened. But luckily, and very professionally, it still didn't really affect the end result. And that was, you know, thankfully that was the case. But there was, you know, personality problems on the set. And, you know, it just takes one person to sort of really just sort of, okay, you know, I'll let it go and just carry on, and which was really good. So that's the worst case I've ever come across.
I can see a scenario, developing where somebody really wants to do a role, but they find quite quickly they're hopelessly out of their depth. So what happens in that case?
Yeah, that's a very good example, and I think during that example that I sort of portrayed was a very similar situation to that. And we had an individual that was very talented in certain areas that we're just absolutely... I mean, we had other teams that were seeing this individual involved with us were very jealous and saying, oh my gosh, you know, we're just not going to do anything compared to what you guys can achieve. But the individual that was involved had different ideas of being on set, being a team leader and a director, whereas they were better in other areas at the time, which would have been way better off and less conflict on the set at the time. So you kind of try to know that everyone's being involved, everyone's putting their perspective into it, and you just kindly talk to each other, just communicate, and hopefully the ones that are sort of less tolerant just kind of like hold their tongues and just come to me later on and have a bit of a chat and let it off their chest and enjoy the rest of the. It's all about having fun. That's really what it should be about.
Okay, well, David, do you think you'll do many more?
Well, every year I say this is my last year, and it hasn't been, but I've always had the same team, and I've always had some good people on my team. You know, I've had Herbie, Corin, and sometimes Jake Harrell, who was always been involved in the team. And I kind of said the same thing to them. Yeah, next year I've had enough. But I still keep on doing it because I think that builds character. You learn a lot more as you go along into it, and you learn to deal with the pressure better, and it's fun. And so, yeah, I probably will still do it, but that depends. I do have a few film projects throughout the year that I've got to commit to now that need my time. So if it doesn't clash with that, then I'll be okay. But if it does, then I'm going to have to give it a miss and do the right thing. So, yeah.
Just to wrap up now, Dave, for your segment,
Sure.
How long will it be until you know if you've got through to, as a finalist?
Sure. What they do is, to put it straight, the weekend that you commit to, it's the following weekend on a certain day that you're appointed for your heat viewing. And the team leader of Christchurch, AJ, will just sort of assess and get the favourites out there. And you get the judges that say, hey, look, these are our big favourites. And usually within a week and a half, you get to find out whether you reach the first shortlist, I suppose, if you call that. And that's when it kind of filters out from there. So you don't have to wait too long. And I guess if you look at it, there's around about 60 to 70 teams in Christchurch that he has to look at. And each film is about 5 minutes, no longer than that. And he has to look at every single film and share that with his other judges to kind of assess which one would be worth going into the city finals. So it's a lot, but they try to do it in the shortest time frame possible.
Well, very best of luck with your endeavours, David. That was David Duckworth telling us all about the 48-hour film competition. And that's brilliant, David. Thank you. Right, the next person I'm going to speak to is Jonathan Bryden, and he's going to talk to us about improv. But we're going to get back after that, Jackie from Extinction Rebellion, because during her interview, which was right at the head of the show, we had a few technical problems, so a lot of what she said wasn't heard. So it's really good that Jackie's hung on and will be coming back to join us again a bit later on this evening. Now, if you'd like to call After Dark, phone 027 257 9672. We are a talkback programme, and we'd be delighted to take your call and find out what's on your mind.